Hello, this is Lord's Legion and welcome to a brand new movie review, and as you can see this is rather late, mainly because I didn't have much motivation to actually see this movie. But you know, I wanted to give it a chance, so here we are now. And the film I'm going to be reviewing is of course the infamous Solo: A Star Wars Story, which is probably the only time I'm going to refer it as such, mainly because it doesn't really roll off the tongue. And yes, this is going to be a spoiler-free review, despite the fact that it really doesn't have much to spoil. But without further ado, let's begin with this review. Now, going into this movie, I had such low expectations, not because of The Last Jedi effect, because in hindsight, I actually loved that movie. But ultimately, I wasn't really sold on the whole idea of a Han Solo movie to begin with, as well as the fact that the trailers didn't really sell me that well. And it didn't help that this movie did suffer from a lot of behind the scenes drama. But the real question is this Han Solo film even good, or is it as bad as people thought it was going to be? And to tell you guys the truth, I have never felt so bored at a cinema in a long time. And although I wouldn't go as far as to say that this movie is the worst Star Wars film in the world, at the same time it's the most boring. And even from some of the lesser Star Wars films, there's always this one particular moment that just wows everyone, but really this movie doesn't even have that. And ultimately this is by far the most bland Star Wars film that I have ever come across. Now, the plot of this film is rather simple in that it does deal with Han Solo's origin, but at the same time, the entire execution of his origin is such a huge mess. And half of the time, I didn't even know what the actual story was all about. And ultimately, this movie kept on dragging for so long, and I had no idea where it was going to end. To the point where I kept on looking at my phone multiple times, and that's something I never do. Now, when it comes down to the cast, I really have to begin with the elephant in the room, who is none other than Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo, who people seem to be divisive over. Now, me personally, I didn't think that Ehrenreich was ever a convincing young Han Solo, despite maybe one or two scenes. That being said though, in terms of his overall performance as well as just as his own character in general, I honestly thought he did a pretty fine job. And given how he's contracted in at least 2 other movies, I do believe that he does have potential in being a pretty decent Han Solo if given the chance. We also have Emilia Clarke as Qi'ra, I believe it's how we pronounce it. And you know, she was fine, I guess, if a little bland. Though I suppose it's more of a case of how the character was written than anything else. And we also have Donald Glover as Lando, and honestly he was one of the best characters in the entire film. His performance was spot on and he was incredibly charming. Although I do wish that we had just a little more of him because he was just that good. Plus you can't have Han Solo without Chewbacca, and honestly they did a really good job with the character, and he easily had some of the best moments in the entire film. And I especially enjoyed how he first met Han Solo, which was actually believable. Plus we also have Woody Harrelson as Beckett, and what can I say, it's Woody Harrelson, you can never go wrong with the guy, and he can always pull off a great performance even with a douchebag character. And lastly we have Paul Bettany as Dryden, and personally I thought he was a rather interesting villain. And given credit where it's due, at the very least Dryden, at least in terms of main antagonist goes, he is a pretty unique villain. Now, something that really turned me off about this movie is the fact that it just didn't really look good visually, and I'm not talking about the set designs or even so much the costumes. Hell, even the special effects are on point. But I just really didn't like the grittiness as well as the overall tone, because it just kinda seemed bland and uninteresting. I give them props for trying something new with the Star Wars formula, but it just didn't sit well for me. And I find it especially jarring because in one scene you'll have more of this gritty western type tone, but then the next you'll have more of this traditional Star Wars tone. And a lot of the time it felt like the movie didn't even know what it was trying to be. Hell, even the action scenes weren't really as exciting as you would hope for in a Star Wars film. Sure, they were well done and all, but they didn't really have much stakes. But in the end, I just really don't have much to say about this movie because I was so bored most of the time. And it's not that it's a bad movie by any stretch, because given credit where it's due, it's competently made for the most part. But to me it's just paint by numbers, and it's the most bland addition to the Star Wars franchise. And like I said, I had low expectations, and even after coming out of this movie, I was somehow still disappointed by this film. And in the end, the only real glue that this movie has is the cast, because majority of them do pull off charming performances. But apart from the cast, there's really no reason you should watch this movie, and I would suggest you just skip this one, or at the very least just wait till it's up on Blu-ray or something. And so for the final verdict for Solo, A Star Wars Story, I'm gonna be really generous here and give it a 5 out of 10, because if it wasn't for the cast, I would give it a 4. Feel free to skip this one, you're really not missing much from Solo. So what do you personally think of Solo, A Star Wars Story? Did you find this film to be incredibly boring, or did you personally find more enjoyment out of this film than I did? Comment below and share some thoughts. And as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.